Hola, me llamo Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is Resakest Remarkable Books number 38. The first book today is Baseball Stars 1961 by Ray Robinson, the editor 1961. Yeah, who wouldn't want to read a book about baseball stars from 1961, right? He talks about the tremendous players from that year, like Dick Groat, Vernon Law, Warren Spahn, Pete Runnels, Ernie Banks, Ron Hansen, Brooks Robinson, Norm Larker, Minnie Minoso, Al Smith, Ernie Broglio, Jim Lemon, Bud Daly, Ray Herbert, Tony Taylor, Elroy Face, what a name, Jim Gentile, Maury Wills, and Nellie Fox. So some of those are familiar, some are not, because maybe they didn't have much of a career. The next book is Bridge to Terabithia by Catherine Patterson, 1977. I read this out loud to our son Tim. It's a wonderful children's book, very touching. It's a story of a friendship of two 12-year-old children. Jess is a country boy, and Leslie is, well, she's a creative person. And together they create an imaginary kingdom in the woods. Leslie's family has no television. Well, this is good news, because I'm in favor of that, getting kids away from the TV. She teaches Jess how to live. So the qualities in this book that come out are strength and courage. Wonderful book. The next book is Bo Stories, The Sporting News, 1990. This is all about Bo Jackson, the superstar in two sports, baseball and football. He hit humongous home runs as a Kansas City Royal, and he was able to gun down runners with his arm. In other words, from the outfield, he had a very powerful throwing arm, and he could sprint the base paths real fast, strong. And then, it's funny because he was well known as a college football star, and then he surprised people by playing baseball, and he did real well. He tended to strike out a lot early on. And then he of course, he was famous for breaking his bat over his knee when he would strike out. And then he shocked people by saying he wanted to play in the NFL, and he became an Oakland Raiders running back. At one point, he had a 90-yard touchdown run, and famously was able to. He scored on a ball where Brian Bosworth was this famous linebacker who was unable to bring him down. But actually, if you look at that play, Bosworth he did okay. It wasn't that bad. And it was very sad that Bo Jackson, he had a very terrible injury, hip injury, and that ended his career. It wasn't that long. Here he was a superstar in two sports, baseball and football. And this hip injury, this happened in football, and then he did make a comeback in baseball, played a little bit, but that wasn't that great. But anyway, it was really something when his career was ongoing. The next book is Yaz by Carl Yastrzemski, 1968. Wow, he's the famous Boston Red Sox slugger, left fielder, and power hitter. He grew up very poor, the son of a potato farmer in Bridgehampton, Long Island, New York. Went to college at Notre Dame. Was tutored by Ted Williams. Yeah, Ted Williams was the famous left fielder, and then Yastrzemski took over from him. This book talks about the glorious season of 1968, Boston's impossible dream. Yastrzemski won the Triple Crown, in other words, the highest batting average, most home runs, most RBIs in the American League. His manager, Dick Williams, really made a difference on that team. Teammates included Jim Lonborg, Rico Petrocelli, George Scott. They lost the World Series in 7 games, came up a little bit short, but that was a tremendous season, and Yastrzemski was the star player on that very beloved team for Boston Red Sox fans. The next book is Do You Love Football by John Gruden with Vic Carucci, 2003. John Gruden was the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who won the 2002 Super Bowl. Actually, recently he was named he got out of coaching for quite a while. He was a TV announcer. Now he's going to be the Raiders I think, the Oakland or Las Vegas Raiders coach for this coming season. He was only 39 when he won a Super Bowl. That was the youngest ever. He coached everywhere. He actually coached the Oakland Raiders, Philadelphia Eagles, San Francisco 49ers. I think he has assistant coach probably. This book talks about players like Rich Gannon, his quarterback in Oakland, Warren Sapp, tremendous defensive player. And according to the book, Gruden sleeps only 3 hours a night, so he's really older than 39. And Tampa Bay really wanted him as their coach, and they made a trade, very unusual to trade for a coach. And they gave up a lot. They gave up the number 1 and 2 draft picks for 2 years, plus $8 million. And then in Gruden's first year, Tampa won the Super Bowl and beat his former team in that championship game. What a story. He's a good guy, and so we'll see how he does in his this next coming year I guess he's able to get, take a break from coaching because the guys get so burned out. It's really, they work out, there's just so much work that they can't, some of them can't do it for very long because it's so tiring. The next book is The Incredible Mets by Maury Allen, 1969. This is interesting book. The New York City at one time had 3 baseball teams. They lost 2 of them, moved to California. The Dodgers moved to L.A. and the Giants to San Francisco. That means they only had the Yankees, but they got an expansion team, the Mets. And in 1962, that was their first year, I believe. Their record, I think, was 40-120. So this, I think, was the worst record ever. And they had their Casey Stengel was their manager that year. He'd been the old Yankee manager. Choo-Choo Coleman, really interesting fellow. I had his baseball card. Somebody asked him, reporter asked Choo-Choo Coleman about his wife. They said, what's her name and what's she like? And Coleman replied, her name is Mrs. Coolman, and she likes me. That's pretty funny. Anyway, the Dodgers, after only 7 years, the Mets won the World Series in 1969. And these star players included Tommy Agee, Cleon Jones, Ron Swoboda, Tom Seaver, Jerry Koosman, Ed Kranepool, Tug McGraw, and Gil Hodges. I believe they're a manager. So they call them the Miracle Mets because they went from, being the worst team ever 7 years later, winning the World Series in 1969. And actually, it's mentioned if you ever see the movie Frequency, it's a real wonderful movie with that, what's his name, and about a father and a son, and that gets into this whole thing about, there's a scene where the father had died as a fireman, then there's this like the son grew up without a father, he's communicating with his father, and he thinks, oh my God, he's communicating in time with his father in the past, and in 69, and then so he at one point it's real interesting, and then this guy is accused of a murder, and he's like, no, I didn't do it, and he knows that the Mets are going to win the World Series, and he's telling this crazy story that he's communicating with his son in the future. And he says, no, Tommy Agee's going to get hit by a pitch, get on first base, and they'll know it because there's a shoe polish on the ball, and it happens. And so it has a very happy ending. Instead of dying, he's saved. So his father and son, can have each other, and then there's a grandson. They're playing baseball at the end. Anyway, wonderful movie. The next book is To Walk the Sky Path by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor, 1973. Another wonderful young people book. Read it out loud to our son, Tim. Billy Tommy is this 10-year-old Seminole Indian in Florida. He goes to the white man's school, and he's caught between 2 worlds. This actually, this is a very common theme, and all over the world people have this problem of cultural differences. And he finally realizes that he can, quote, teach the white man what the Indian way was all about. Very touching. I'm all in favor of this and learning from American Indians. Their wisdom, they did have wisdom, and we can learn from them, especially about the natural world and treating nature better, instead of just all this pollution and destruction, which has been prevalent worldwide. The next book is Strange and Amazing Football Stories by Bill Gutman, 1986. Yeah, this talks about Jim Thorpe, tremendous player. He was an American Indian, real tremendous player in the NFL. Billy Kilmer, I recall from the 1970s, a star for the Washington Redskins. Dan Marino, Doug Flutie. Yeah, he was real short, but he had a great career in Canada. Bernie Kosar, who was still very beloved in Cleveland here. Refrigerator Perry, this guy was so big. Refrigerator Perry was the guy. I think he was a defensive lineman, but sometimes they put him in to run the ball on the Chicago Bears. The next book is Baseball Stars of 1971 by Ray Robinson, 1971. All these books I bought at book sale in the Philippines that show they have all. You never know what you're going to run into because they come up with these real old books. Anyway, this book, so the stars of that season depicted include Hank Aaron, Johnny Bench, Rico Cardi starred with Cleveland, Alex Johnson. When Tim was growing up, I used to warn him that you don't want to be like Alex Johnson, who had a bad attitude. Pete Rose, Frank Robinson, Frank Howard, real tall, big guy. Harmon Killebrew, I remember as a boy seeing him hit a home run on TV. Sam McDowell, pitched for Cleveland, had a problem with drinking. The old days. The next book is The Courage of Sarah Noble by Alice Dalglish, 1954. So this is kind of an older children's book. I read it out loud to our son Tim. It's set in 1707 Connecticut. This character, 8-year-old Sarah, lives with Indians while her father gets their family. She is brave and makes friends with Indian children. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I don't know how, I can't remember the details of the story, but this happened, because the Indians really were there, and this guy, sometimes these pioneers, the European descent pioneers, would move into a place, and then they'd have to go. Apparently, he had to go back. It's really interesting. I'm fascinated by cultures, making friends. I always enjoy making friends with people from different cultures. It's interesting. The next book is Otis Taylor, The Need to Win, by Otis Taylor with Mark Stallard, 2003. It's a great book. The legendary Kansas City Chiefs from the NFL wide receiver from the 1960s and early 1970s. Hero of the 1969 Super Bowl. I think when the Kansas City won the Super Bowl. Hank Stram, as mentioned, he was the coach, but later he was a radio guy, announced games on the radio. Len Dawson, the quarterback. And so you read this book and you think Otis Taylor should be in the Hall of Fame. So we'll see about that. Maybe he is. I read this book 12 years ago. And after his career, he became a long-time Kansas City Chiefs scout, looking for top prospects in college. The next book is Dear Mr. Henshaw by Beverly Cleary, 1983. Wonderful children's book, won the Newbery Award. Read it out loud to our son Tim. The character, his name is Lay Botts. He's a 12-year-old boy with no siblings. His parents are divorced. He misses his father, and he finds writing to be helpful in dealing with life. Interesting. Yeah, writing. I have to agree with this. I've enjoyed writing letters. I used to write a lot of letters in the Philippines. I have to get into that again. Writing is a very nice creative outlet for enjoyment. The next book is Planet of the Umps by Ken Kaiser with David Fisher, 2003. The former Major League Baseball umpire tells all. He's a funny, tough guy. He really hated Earl Weaver. This is a good book to read because, people are so hard on, in basketball it's the referee, in football also, and in baseball it's the umpire. And the umpires have to call balls and strikes, and somebody's going to be mad at them on every pitch, either the pitcher or the hitter. And, everyone's trying to win, and then they abuse the umpire. And Earl Weaver was just real hard on umpires. The thing is, they have a job to do. Give them some credit, give them some respect. So this is very good to get the umpire's perspective, since everybody is against the umpires. They never win. It's a real tough job. He liked Mo Vaughn, Rafael Palmeiro, and Catfish Hunter. Mentions these players. Yeah, I was actually in our school at Resakest. I tried to be a referee for some games, and I thought, no, I'm not going to do it, because this is what I experienced. Whatever you decide, if it's a foul, if it's not a foul, or if the ball goes out of bounds, who touched it last, and we didn't have cameras, so everybody was getting mad at me, so I said, I'm not going to be a referee anymore. You guys have to figure out the calls yourself. The next book is the second official NFL trivia book by Jim Campbell, 1982. Yeah, so trivia, I'm not a big into trivia, but the thing that I liked about this book, it has a team photo of the 1922 Marion, Ohio Oorang Indians, who are played in the NFL. My father's hometown, Marion, Ohio, they had a player named Wrinkle Meat. Supposedly, that some of the players were American Indians. Jim Thorpe was the coach. And I used to think that, so Marion, Ohio had an NFL team. Wow. I used to think I should go back, and this was right before my father was born. Although I think they did play a few of their games in Marion. And I thought, I wanted to get a time machine and travel back to 1922 and talk to my grandfather and tell him to see if he can buy the team. I don't know, because back then NFL teams were cheap, and then Marion, I thought Marion could be like Green Bay, a small town that has an NFL team. So anyway, I don't have a time machine. I thought that was so cool because my father's from Marion, and I lived in Marion for a while. We used to go to this park where I think they played that game, in Jim Thorpe. So anyway, the next book is One Day in the Woods by Jean Craighead George, 1995. Actually, another fine children's book dealing with nature and animals by Jean Craighead George. In this book, she talks about a flying squirrel, deer, wood ducklings, and an oven bird. She mixed nature with entertainment. Yeah, very, very entertaining and educational. That's the whole purpose, actually, my purpose of these videos, to promote, because I think learning can be interesting. It doesn't have to be boring. Too bad that so many children are bored in school. The next book is Of Mice and Men by Kurt Smith, 1998. This is a wonderful book. It's all about the NFL's radio and TV announcers over the years. If you're going back, he mentions all these guys who did this job. Who really become very familiar and beloved to the fans watching the games because they're describing what's going on. Guys like Marv Albert, Mel Allen, Chris Berman, one of my favorites. He used to call the San Diego Chargers the Lightning Bolts. And then Berman's famous line was, "He could go all the way," when a guy was making a long touchdown run. Terry Bradshaw, real good guy. Jack Buck, whose son, now Joe Buck's real famous. Ken Coleman, Bob Costas, he's a real famous guy. Dan Deerdorf, who's a player. Jimmy Dudley, Dick Enberg, Frank Gifford. Yeah, Monday Night Football, Frank Gifford. Howard Cosell, also Monday Night Football. Bob Golick, Kurt Gowdy, back in the 70s. Keith Jackson. John Madden, real good guy. I really like John Madden. Paul McGuire, Don Meredith, he was also on Monday Night Football. Al Michaels, who's the top guy now on doing, I think, Sunday Night or Monday Night Football. Brent Musburger, Merwin Scott, Ray Scott, Dick Stockton, Hank Stram, Pat Summerall, Joe Theismann, Chuck Thompson, Bob Trumpy, and Jack Whitaker. All these fellows who announced NFL games on TV and radio. They did a good job. The next book is Safe at Home 2 by Dave Brannon, 1997. This is about Christian spiritual baseball players. So baseball players who are strong Christians and who share that and who aren't shy about talking about their Christianity. Players like Brett Butler, Travis Fryman, Joe Girardi, Andy Pettit, John Smoltz, Kevin Seitzer, and Tim Salmon. Well, that's really wonderful because I'm all in favor. I think this is the most important thing in life, is our spiritual life that helps us have a connection with God so that we can become better people and live happy and productive lives. The next book is Homesick, My Own Story by Gene Fritz, 1982. This book won the Newbery, another children's book. I read it out loud to our son Tim. This character, Jean, is a 12-year-old girl of American parents who had lived her whole life in China. I imagine they were missionaries, because that's probably why they were there. Anyway, in 1927, the family moved to America. So she had this problem. She had grown up in China. Yeah, her parents were American, but she knew what she knew was China. So she had this adjustment to make in the United States, which is kind of strange and unusual since she was American herself. but she was used to being with Chinese people, so it's kind of similar to our son Tim's situation, because he grew up in the Philippines with a strong American influence from his father. Yours truly. Very touching story. Caught between two cultures. That can be problematic, but it also can, but it can be, I think, expansive. You can have two cultures if you live in another country. So hopefully become a better person. The next book is It's Only a Game by Terry Bradshaw with David Fisher, 2001. Oh, I love this book. Back in the 1970s, the Pittsburgh Steelers were the best team. They won 4 Super Bowls, and they were in our Cleveland's division. And boy, they used to beat the Browns a lot, and they were so strong. I hated the Steelers back then, and and they won 4 Super Bowls, and we weren't much of a contender. But now I look back, I'm very have fond memories of Terry Bradshaw and that team. And I used to see, actually, he was at the Super Bowl, I think. He's gone into TV and NFL announcing. So anyway, Bradshaw's a funny guy, a good guy, and he's funny, and I really like him. And back then he was so strong, he had a real strong arm, and I think he had ADHD. He had problems. He's been divorced number of times, and he said he'd trade all of his Super Bowl trophies for just having a long-term marriage, because he hasn't been able to do that. The next book is Half and Half by Lindsay Namioka, 2003. And this is, I think, a children's book. I read it out loud to our son, Tim. Fiona Cheng is 11 years old. Her father is Chinese. Her mother is Scottish, and they live in Seattle, Washington, United States. So this is very, very interesting. It deals with the issues of children whose parents are from different cultures. And here, just imagine the parent, they're living in a third country. So she has the Chinese influence from her father, Scottish from her mother, and then living in the U.S. So this can be challenging. But actually, and more people are like that, because there's so many. My wife and I, Alice, she's a Filipino. We have different cultures. So our son Tim he was raised by parents with different cultures. And I think if you can have respect for each other, and see the good, then this can be a very positive thing, where the child can have more than one culture. Actually, the benefits of 2 cultures, because every culture is limited, and hopefully if the parents can, because there's conflict, they have different ideas about how to raise the child. So hopefully they can overcome that and have respect for each other. The next book is San Diego Padres, 1969 to 2002, A Complete History by Nelson Papucci, 2002. I bought this for 5 pesos at book sale, I think at Green Hills Shopping Center in the Philippines. I really loved it. The Padres made it to 2 World Series, 1984 and 1998, and they lost both of them, so they still haven't won a World Series. Guys who played for them include Gaylord Perry, who I think won the Cy Young, and Cleveland had traded him. He was a star in Cleveland. Nate Colbert, who was their big home run hitter back in the 70s. Dave Winfield, who was probably their biggest star over the years, big home run hitter. Randy Jones, a top pitcher. George Hendrick, oh, you know about that. Oscar Gamble, who died this year, I believe, or in the past year. Played for Cleveland. God bless Oscar Gamble. He had that big afro, big hair. Tony Gwynn, Ray Kroc, who was the owner, who also owned McDonald's. So I really enjoyed this story, the San Diego Padres. When they lost in 4 straight, the 1998 World Series against the New York Yankees, and then there was this guy and the final game was in San Diego. And they're very different cities, New York City and San Diego. New York's really go and aggressive. San Diego's a smaller, laid-back town on the water, and it's warmer. And this Yankee fan had like a Yankee flag. He was marching up and down the aisles after the game, kind of rubbing it in. And one of these fans said, "Dude, have some respect," because that wasn't respectful, Anyways, really good to learn about that. Actually, they became my favorite team in the National League, because I always rooted for the underdog, and Cleveland was an underdog, and so they're still waiting to win their first championship. The next book is Waiting for Teddy Williams by Howard Frank Mosher, 2004. This is outstanding, wonderful. This is fiction, very prophetic, and in the In the book, he's describing the Red Sox win the World Series, and it came out in 2004. And that's the year the Red Sox did win the World Series, their first since 1918, 86-year title drought. So how about that? Very prophetic. I wonder if it had an influence, because the mind is so important, you know. Anyway, this character, E.A. Allen, is a boy in a small town in Vermont, and he hopes to one day meet his father. I guess his parents must have broken up. Very sad. And he wants to play for the Red Sox and help them win the World Series. All his dreams come true. It whetted my desire to live in Marion, Ohio, my father's hometown, because I have a tendency to see hometown life as idyllic, and it has its good and bad points, but definitely nicer because it's more peaceful and more nature. The next book is The Kid from Tompkinsville by John R. Tunis, 1940. This is an old children's book, and it's fictional. It's in the story. The 1940 Brooklyn Dodgers win the World Series. Of course, that didn't happen until 1955. The hero, Roy Tucker, is a small-town boy who makes good. And the book ends with the Dodgers and Giants tied for first place in the last game of the regular season. Also, they didn't win the World Series in this story. And the Dodgers were leading the Giants at the Polo Grounds in the bottom of the 14th inning. It kind of leaves you hanging. Yeah, one of those stories. Maybe he wanted to have a sequel to get people to buy that. Keep buying his books. The next book is World Series by John R. Tunis, 1941. Well, this is the sequel, as I mentioned. Right, the sequel to the book I just mentioned, The Kid from Tompkinsville. In this book, also fiction, the Brooklyn Dodgers defeat the Cleveland Indians in the World Series in 7 games. Roy Kid Tucker helps out, but the catcher, player, manager, Dave Leonard, is the real hero. So this is wonderful. The guy wrote about the Dodgers winning the World Series, which actually he had to wait for till 1955. But you know, that's the nice thing about fiction. You can make up a story and have whatever you want to come true. You can write about it, and maybe it can help. And actually, I think the Major League movies in Cleveland, which showed Cleveland Indians winning, helped Cleveland to win in the 1990s. Well, they didn't win the championship, and the movies don't depict that, which is too bad. Maybe they need to. Hopefully, they can make a new movie with the Cleveland winning the World Series, and that can help. That can come true, because it hasn't happened yet since 1948. The next book is Interlink and Other Nature Humankind Poems by Victoria C.G. Greenleaf, M.D., M.S., 2005. Actually, I know the author. I don't want to give away her real name because she wants to remain anonymous. And she asked me to write a recommendation for the back. If you do get this book, you'll turn to the back cover and you'll see my short recommendation of the book and how I thought was saying very positive things about it. And if you happen to come across this book, and these are nature poems by my very good friend. She's into books. She's into nature, and she writes poems about nature. Real nice, wonderful book. The next book is Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow, Discovering Your Right Livelihood by Marcia Sinitar, 1987. I found this book very appealing because I want to enjoy my work. I think it's important to enjoy your work. And so when I read this book, back in 2006, my interests, at the time were helping others to love reading books and to promote physical play and American pro sports history. So these are the things that interested me at that time. And I think it's important. I think I think it's important to find work that we love. So anyway, looks like we're out of time. Thank you very much for watching. I wish you well. Hope you find a good book to read. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.